Welcome to the Legislation Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole meeting, February 15, 2023. Our main topic tonight is going to be proposed ordinance number 11, Trees and Shrubs Ordinance, dated 1/18/2023, and it's sponsored by Councilperson Celeste Friend. So I want to hand the floor over to Celeste, let her talk about her ordinance, and then if we have any questions throughout the ordinance, we'll go in order. All right, Celeste, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. DeBrango. So, pretty straightforward tree ordinance. I know that this is something that a number of people have thought for a while we needed. So I've been working on this for a while, sat down with Commissioner Short and Commissioner Phillips, started out with something that was more complicated and sort of pared it down to something that's pretty simple. It really just regulates trees in public places. We're not attempting to regulate trees on private property. It establishes a city arborist, and the legislation establishes Mr. Short as the city arborist or someone he designates if at some point, in the future we had extra money that we could have a separate person. Most of my motivation for this is that in order for Utica to qualify for Tree City USA status, there are a number of things that we have to do to qualify. We have to have an ordinance. We have to have a tree board, and the tree board is contained within this ordinance. We have to celebrate Arbor Day. That's also within the ordinance. And then we have to spend a certain amount of money by a formula that the Arbor Day, which is the people who oversee the Tree City USA, say. It's a certain amount of money, I think, per capita. And we did the calculation, and we are spending that because we were able to include the salary and benefits of the dedicated DPW employees who take care of our trees. So between that and the budget lines we already had, we met that criteria. So we just need the ordinance, the tree board, and the celebration of Arbor Day. And when we get to the point where we've got a piece of legislation that we like well enough and pass it, we'll be able to apply for Arbor Day, Tree City USA, and that is luckily a rolling application. Like, we can apply for it as soon as we think we're qualified.
Yeah, just a quick question on Tree City USA. Is there any financial gain to the city?
Yes.
Okay.
So it will allow us to then, a couple of things. It will allow us to apply for grants. There are many grants out there in relation to trees that you need to have Tree City USA status to apply for. It will also, this is sort of a longer term thing, it is one of the boxes that you check for climate smart communities. So it's just another, that sort of point system for climate smart communities. And I believe back in 2016, the council passed a resolution that we should work our way towards climate smart communities. But to answer your first question more directly, yes, there will be grants that we can apply for once we have Tree City USA status.
All right.
And as I said, so I sat down a couple of times with both commissioners. We had something slightly more complicated. We kind of pared it back. So what I would be very interested in tonight are what are the changes people want, what's in there that they don't think shouldn't be in there, or what isn't in there that people do think should be in there. I know that Mr. Galimi had some concerns about how we write part of it. I had a suggestion, and so when Ms. DeGiorgio comes back, I had a suggestion about the penalty part that I'd like to float and see what people think, a way to change that. There's one tiny place where we need to take out a phrase, which is on the last page under injury to trees and shrubs. It says, no person shall, without the consent of the owner in the case of a private tree or shrub, or without written permission from the city. I think we just need to take out without the consent of the owner in the case of a private tree or shrub, since the ordinance doesn't in any way cover any private trees or shrubs. So that's where I'm at, and I'm interested in hearing what people would like to see added, amended, etc.
Okay, so this is going to be a brand new ordinance.
Yes.
That we are going to present to the council.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing, I looked at it quickly this afternoon, and I know regarding the trees, section 217-27, 218-37, 2-2, 2-23-6, and it didn't really explain too much about what you have here in detail.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to do is ask Mr. Short or Corporation Counsel, I don't know if they reviewed this yet, but just if you want me, I could take it page by page. We could talk about it and make an agreement or not an agreement and at least get the progress started. Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything that you'd like to add, Corporation Counsel?
So I don't know, I just missed the first part, I don't know what you guys said for the meeting, part of the meeting.
Basically, there's some qualifications that we have to meet in order to become
Tree City USA.
Tree City USA. And that would allow us to apply for grants and help us towards getting grants, you know, for obviously different areas of the city and most likely purchasing trees and installing them and all that good stuff.
So, I guess, format-wise, the section numbers are not,
Right.
the correct. It should be section 2-23- starting with 300.
Okay.
I
just plugged in placeholders there, yeah.
So those need to be amended. You don't need this, I guess, this front page with the, basically, table of contents. We don't
Okay.
need that. I don't know, if we talked about, any of the substance of this. I mean, I have a couple issues as far as the enforceability of some of the provisions. The two big ones are section, I don't know if you want me to go page by page, but it's labeled as 201-12, injury to trees and shrubs. It pertains to basically issues that are civil in matter. We would have no way to enforce issues that, you know, cutting down trees that are within private residences or on other neighbors' property. So that's the first little bit that's problematic. The second on that page is,
We don't have any cutting down of trees on private property.
well, this says no person shall without the consent of the owner in the case of a private tree or shrub.
Right, so I wanted to actually remove that. That's the only place, and I think that was in there because earlier we did have some regulation of private, and when we took that out, we failed to take that one phrase out. So that part of the sentence needs to come out, and it's the only part of the legislation which makes any reference to private property. So that just failed to come out as an editing issue.
Okay. I guess the other issue that I have is if this is only referring to the public, trees in public places, then that's fine.
Okay.
Trees in the city right away, I would probably have some issues with some of these other provisions. I mean, if people are putting netting or other things on their trees during the winter in the right of way to protect those trees or do what they need to do, that would apply. And I see that as
Okay.
one, problematic, and two, I don't know how we enforce that. Because even though they're in the city right away, I mean, those are, you know, they're on their property. The other issue is section 201-14, the penalties for offenses. We are in the process of trying to move away from making our code criminal and be more civil. So anything referencing criminal provisions, guilty, upon conviction, a fine, all would need to be changed so it reflects it civilly.
Right.
And then, let's see. Similarly, with just the enforcement purposes, section 201-6, permitting, I don't know if probably Marcus and probably Dave can speak to this. The current ordinance as it's written only applies to cutting down trees. This would apply to trimming branches, doing basically anything for a public tree or a tree existing in the city right away. And I know lots of times when we have major storms within the city that trees come down, that we have residents that are trying to essentially help Dave to either clear sidewalks from trees or clear branches from power lines and trying to assist, you know, the city in doing that. This doesn't allow for that. It basically makes someone have to come in and get a permit to do all of those things. So I don't know how, you know, not that that's an enforcement issue, but it just creates more of a headache for probably Dave and everybody else who probably wants people to be able to do some of those things. I mean, and the other thing is right now it's just, and I don't know, maybe Dave, you can speak to how it works right now. This would require a permit. Obviously, I know Dave, you're going out, if people want to cut trees, you're giving the authorization, but this would require an actual permit, you know, a number of other steps that both Dave and whoever, the individual, to do to be able to cut those trees, and, you know, it kind of adds steps if we're trying to get things done in a quick manner, I should say.
So,
And that was a conversation that we had in one of our committee meetings.
Right.
And that was something that we were gonna have to bring in the city clerk on too, to
Right.
talk about.
right. Part of what I mean, I take your point, Mr. Giorgio, about we want to allow people who are reasonably trying to say, like, there's a storm, a branch breaks, it's covering, we want them to be able to, and Mr. Galimi had a similar kind of thing. So I think we might want to work in some language to the effect that people can do things that reasonably address issues of safety or something like that. So there might be some way to address that. But what we most want to do is we want to try to prevent people from cutting down trees in the city right-of-way that belong to us. So the idea of the permitting process is to try to, because what Mr. Short will tell us is that somebody calls him and says, hey, there's this tree in front of my house and it's diseased, come take it down. And he goes out and it's not diseased and we don't want to take it down. And then they cut it down anyway. So what we'd actually like to come up with is some kind of a remedy for that. And in terms of that, the penalties that you discussed in, so what is now numbered 20114, I was wondering whether, let's say that happens. Somebody doesn't get a permit, or they ask for a permit and they're denied, and then they cut it down anyway. Could we write it into the law that if people cut down a perfectly good tree that the city arborist says shouldn't have been cut down, what we do is we go ahead and replace that tree, and we charge that person who did that for the replacement cost as an abatement, with actual labor and actual material costs.
Without doing research on that,
Right.
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know if we can, maybe Marcus could have a better idea, if we can
Dave.
force someone, if we can,
Can I just add one thing? Does this occur often?
Yes.
It does, okay.
So I
So,
think, yeah,
excuse me, so a lot of this goes back, the current tree ordinance in the charter simply states about elm trees, and that's all it states. And that's where it comes into the private property. At some point in 1968, the Common Council authorized the city to go on private property and take down elm trees that were all dying from Dutch elm. And that was really the only thing that was in there as far as the tree ordinance. Back when I got in 97, 96, in the Parks Department, one of my biggest issues was everybody calling about they wanted their trees down, whether it needed to come down or not. And a lot of our biggest issues were within our immigrant populations.
They wanted the trees
They
down?
wanted the trees down, for whatever reason it may
A
be.
lot of them don't like the leaves. And
Exactly, and it's dirty in front of their house.
The
so
roots,
forth.
the
Okay.
roots.
So we were into this big thing about deforesting the whole city. And if you remember a few years ago, Davy Tree came in with our tree inventory, and they gave you a whole presentation about the value of trees and what it does for the city and this and that. And it was all great, but we had nothing to back it. This council or the city had nothing to back what was told to us. So over the years, I had accumulated different tree ordinances from Ithaca, which is really the gold standard of all tree ordinances in the country. They're a little militant, we didn't want to go that far. Fayetteville, Syracuse, even Albany, they all have a tree ordinance of some degree to protect their urban forestry within their neighborhoods. And that's how this all came about. I wanted to have some mechanism to protect what's out there. We have a lot of trees in the city, a lot of trees, and they're in various stages of decline. Trees are just like humans. As they get older, they develop all sorts of problems, and at some point they need to be just cut down because they're a danger. So that's what this is really what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
So that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Marcus, you wanted to make a point?
no, they were asking about the remedy of planting a tree and what my experience with codes is. And I'm not a lawyer, but what I understand about the code is where we do abatements now, where we remedy something that's broken. So we don't do it like on houses or not. We move trash and we board up houses. And those are the only two things we currently abate,
And
and
we-
green waste piles.
And we cut people's lawns.
We cut people's lawns. Those are specifically in the code that we have an abatement with those because they're a public nuisance or public safety issue. So I think that we would have to declare the tree some kind of public safety or public nuisance issue.
Yeah, I mean, if your question is if they cut down the tree, can we replant a new one in that area? I don't know.
But if the absence of that tree is a public safety issue, then yes, but it's how far are you gonna go with tree, you know what I mean?
Okay, Councilman Miola.
David, other than the system we have now, what do you wanna change?
I guess I've always needed a resource to go back to say, this is why you can't take the tree down. Or if you do take the tree down, this is what'll happen.
All right, so what reasons do you believe that you need to go by? Because we put our faith into you in the Park Department on judgment of trees and stuff like that. All right, especially around the power lines, that they need to be done by National Grid in our canopy. So you've been doing an excellent job for decades. So I want to continue that faith. So what do you need from us for verbiage in legislation that would help you?
Basically, if you take down a tree illegally, there is some recourse to go after. This goes back for years how we tried to do that. It's very complicated. So, I guess maybe that's something that still needs to be looked at, how we can do
All
that.
right, so it's something we have to research at this time. You agree, Stephanie?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with having a mechanism to enforce if people are cutting down trees that shouldn't be. I just don't know, one, if we can, I guess the issue is replant the other tree, right? You know, that could be more of a hassle to do. I don't know. And then the other component of that, which we were talking about permitting, is how far we want to go to say you have to come get a permit versus, you know, I mean, we can have some kind of permit or you need, you know, permission, but I mean, I think some of the, you know, some of this is, you know, supervision. I don't know if we want, you know.
Well, from two things I understand, and Dave will answer, but from what I understand from our meetings is, he wants some control over what they plant in the right of way too. So there's two issues, what they destroy and what they plant. So the permit is guided to what they plant. I don't want you to plant an invasive species here. What they destroy is the other half of that, right?
Right. I mean, I have people planting pine trees between the curb and the sidewalk. It's the worst tree that you can plant in the city. Norway maples, it's on a DEC list. It's an invasive species tree. They pop the sidewalks. We're looking for more future planning. And that's one thing that the city always lacks, is looking down the line to do things right.
A lot of the constituents are not educated in knowing what to plant also, Dave.
That's true. But I gotta also have something to show them.
Right, he's gotta have
And right now, we're
some
really not making things show
documentation.
people.
So
Right.
we need to develop a list to show them what they could plant.
This-
It's in the legislation.
And
We
they
do
have
it in
to
legislation.
choose which one they obviously want,
We've
which one they
listed
want
the
to
trees that
plant.
you can plant, depending if it's under a power line or if it's an open space. We've listed the trees that you should not plant. So that's in the legislation. We're looking for a mechanism to control that too.
But they get the trees from the city, am I right in saying that? They don't go out and buy their own tree.
Sometimes they do.
Some-
Sometimes
they
they
do?
do.
Trees.
Okay,
Now, some people will go out and buy a little twig and put it in the ground and hopefully it matures.
yeah.
You know, so we sort of standardize in the legislation what size tree it will be and what it has to be.
Okay.
So we're just trying to give more structure to an overall concept for a healthy urban forest in the city.
Okay. Councilman
So,
Williamson.
yeah, I was very so
Microphone,
involved with
please.
the council.
Microphone, thank you.
And, you know, I'm looking at this, I've seen this before, we discussed it many times. And the thing I worry about, it's gonna become, it's just a headline legislation, because there's no teeth to it. The reason why I say there's no teeth to it, because we discussed it, how much would an arborist cost us to have a dedicated arborist to the city of Utica? How much would an arborist cost us?
So off the top of my head, I think an arborist in Syracuse is making like 70,000.
Okay, that's number one. Now, how many trucks would that arborist need with a lift? Because the arborist and the DPW worker, that's, you know, they're two different people. One's going out and trimming trees, because a lot of trees need to be trimmed by an arborist, not by a non-arborist, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's an issue. And then, you know, the 50-50, you know, we kind of discussed that, like the sidewalks. They want to purchase a tree, but it's got to be a certain tree, we go 50% of it. And then, you know, dumping of trees. Where are we going to dump trees? Now, the city has to pay for dumping fees, because if not, we're going to have that Abraham Lincoln log cabin thing that you had going on over at the dog park for a while, right? And, you know, it became a liability issue, because we have no place to dump trees. unless you gotta put it into your, how much does it cost to dump?
Depends on how many trees they take down a year.
Okay,
That's
so.
always been an issue for us.
So let's go back to that. We put an ordinance in a couple of years ago, when we take a tree down, you got 1 year to replace it.
Right.
Has that been accomplished? Absolutely not. Why? Because you have no DPW workers or parks workers. That's what's happening. So that's what I'm saying. Was that, yeah, we meant, we gotta replace the tree for the canopy for the city. Yeah, we want the city to look like Cooperstown. We want it to all look like that beautiful canopy because of Alphabet roads and everything else. We all know that, all right? It's all good for everything and aesthetics. How about the Historical Commission? They have no teeth, so when they put in a glass door on Rutgers Street, we can't go after them. They violate laws on Rutgers Street with some of these buildings. They have no teeth. Is that part of the trees development? We got Conservancy Department who spends, how much do they spend every year on trees for the city of Utica? Because they're funded for that. How much?
Not very much.
Okay, but that's something we gotta find out. Are we giving them money?
We give them money to plant flowers.
Okay, so we need to look into that. And now they got the Olmsted City thing. They're out constantly planting trees. How many trees did we plant this past year?
I think we planted 42 trees.
Okay, and how much were they a piece?
They were $400 a piece.
Okay, because they gotta be 3-inch calibers, because that one time we planted trees all in the Cornhill on James Street, and within a month, they were all ripped out because they were too small, right? So now we're looking at $400 trees, right? So now multiply that by what we really need, and a dedicated arborist, because it's gonna be nothing but piecemeal until you get dedicated man just for that reason. And we know that, and it's gonna cost us a lot of money. They actually, yeah, we can put laws in there, you cut down a tree on city property, you're gonna be held accountable. You put in a glass door on Rutgers Street that doesn't belong there, it belongs on Chicago Market, you're gonna get held accountable. They can't be held accountable because there's no teeth for that either. So, that's what I worry about, and like I said, I think Stephanie needs to, I shouldn't say need, but, how are we gonna defend it, right? And that's more to look at it, but this is gonna cost a lot of money to really do it and not just be headline legislation like what usually happens. We put something in and it doesn't get enforced because we can't enforce it. It's a great idea, you know what I mean? If we took $500,000 of ARPA money and did it for 5 years, who knows? The arborist and 2 dedicated men in a truck. How much does a truck cost? A new truck to go up? No.
About $165,000.
Okay, you see what I mean? That's a lot of money to put into this to really do it right. Yeah, we could do it right. It's gonna cost money though.
So Councilman Yola, to answer your question about what do I need exactly everything that Councilman Williams just said, but I need the teeth. The only way I get the
So
teeth is from here.
I believe the legislation that you need is a little different format than what we're looking for. So number one, to educate the voters on what trees they can plant, and number two, we want some type of penalty for taking down a tree that is in the city right away without going through the proper process. So those are your 2 issues.
But no, but
I also believe that the arbiter we shouldn't waste money on arbiters and trucks, we should waste money on planting the trees. So I would rather plant another 100 trees.
And I think Councilman Williamson would too, because that's always been our debate about losing the tree canopy. We need to plant more trees.
but we don't have the manpower. See,
Big trees.
how many trees did you take down this past year?
Hundreds.
How many trees you took down 2 years ago that haven't been replanted on those streets? And it all started from South Utica.
Probably all.
Because we're all looking at Arlington and Farmington and all those trees over there. We're taking down trees, but they're not getting replanted. Some of the stumps are still sitting there. There's stumps in front of your dad's place on Eagle Street. All right? I mean,
You're answering your own question.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is, like I said, this is headline legislation. We're all about the earth, but we got nothing to do, we got no funding for it.
All right, I gotta ask you a question. You said, we could fine them if they take them down. We don't have teeth to do that yet. But when you say a permit, is that a permit that they have to pay for through the clerk's office? Or what are we doing with a permit?
I think with the permit, we had asked for them to at least file one, so we can keep track.
So just file, there's no fee involved to file a permit,
Well,
okay.
that's up to the council.
It would have to be up to the council. I mean, years ago, perfect examples, there was a tree that came down, and it was an old historical tree in the historical district. There was a lawyer in the Corporation Counsel's office who was very passionate about trees, and we tried to find him, that individual. And the city court judge at the time said, I'm not gonna bother with this. And that's where it came over.
So we got, there's
Right.
court cases that are submitted.
we
that
had
already
no
set grounds that we
documentation
can't
for it.
enforce.
Exactly, exactly. So that, so we're just trying to figure out what we can do, to try to have a better way of doing it.
How about you send a notice to everybody in the city that owns a home and says, please don't take down trees, and if you do, here's what trees you should put up. I mean, really though.
Yeah, but he did
I
say,
would love to do that, but
I'm just
there is a
saying.
language, Barry, you said a lot of the people that are moving in really don't know, they're not educated enough, and they just assume that they could take the tree down, and that's what we're running up against. But, Councilman Beatrice, you have the floor.
Yes, so you guys were talking, so this legislation that we currently have, can't we just amend it and put a couple things into it? Right? And my next question is, we talk about if we do certain things, we're gonna be able to get grants. What more things do we have to do beside, we have to have an Arbor Day celebration? And these grants we're talking about, are they $50,000 grants? Are they $150,000 grants? What kind of money are they?
Who's writing the grants?
point.
Exactly.
Okay, two different questions.
Yeah.
Since we did the tree inventory, we've opened ourselves up now to New York State DEC grants that we weren't able to do before, because we didn't have a tree inventory. And those grants, the latest one that we're working on right now, that was done by Mohawk Valley,
Edge?
was it, yeah, it was Mohawk Valley Edge, was for $50,000 for trees. And that was just for our planting one. They have another one coming out for another $50,000 for tree maintenance, to do trimming properly, to our point. So it does open the door for a lot more. National Arbor Day Foundation has a grant for tree planting.
Can you talk about the relation of Tree City USA to those grants?
Tree City USA, when they see that, it's a green light to say, okay, your community's invested into what you're doing.
And you can get more than one grant?
Sure.
You can get all the grants. Do we currently have a grant writer doing this?
What we're doing is, this last grant that we're getting through DEC, we collaborated with Central New York Conservancy, Utica Rotary, City of Utica, Mohawk Valley Edge. They upfronted the money for us to get $50,000 tree grant. We've also worked with, there's a watershed organization, Lake Erie Watershed. They're out of Watertown. They've approached us for a tree grant. The Conservancy does a tree grant. So there's other programs that are out there that we either partner with or are eligible for.
So for $50,000, basically you get 125 trees, $400 a pop,
You gotta
right?
take out the administrative costs for whoever wrote the grant.
Okay, so probably 100 trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got more than 100 locations.
But we're getting this grant you're talking about, we're able to get that without being, like according to what you're saying, without being Tree City USA, or correct?
Right now, yes.
But Dave, you also have to interject that most of the residents don't want those trees back.
Right.
Well, it's, but that goes into the water table and the flooding issues. That's where the city comes in. This is for flood mitigation.
Right,
So you
absolutely.
can't force them,
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
so
can.
you
it's
wanna
our
force
property
them to
though,
plant
right?
trees in front of their homes.
If it's on the right of way of the city.
Yeah, it's,
I will say that your best option is to have the buy-in from the homeowner.
Yes.
If they're approached, the majority would say yes.
can I speak to that?
And it also depends on the neighborhoods that you're going.
Alright.
So I would just like to speak to that briefly. So Ballantine Bray is a street that's been very much de-treed. So I fairly recently, first of all, one side has the power lines, the other side doesn't. So I put a letter in the mailbox of everybody on the side of the street that has no power lines. And like out of 20 houses, I think I had 3 people say no thank you, and the rest are thrilled. So I do think it's good to have the buy-in from the homeowners, but most homeowners will buy in. And then since I did that, Dryden Ave wants trees, Ferris Ave wants trees, Briar Ave wants trees. Most people will in fact want the trees. But Mr. Williamson is exactly right. Whether they want the trees or not, the trees are a public good. They mitigate against flooding, they reduce heat island effect, they do a whole lot of important stuff for us. So, you know, some people don't want curbs either, but, I mean, some people don't want sidewalks, but we wouldn't say, yeah, it's a, I mean, it's a public good.
Utica, they want curbs and sidewalks.
Yes, I know they do. I know. And I sympathize with them. But I wanted to ask Mr. Short, I just want to make it really clear. This legislation, you believe, we've got the enforcement thing that Mr. Giorgio is going to help us sort of work out, but you believe that this legislation would help you to move the city a little bit farther along in terms of restoring our canopy, getting more trees. The Tree City USA will make us eligible for more grants than we're currently eligible for, et cetera, right?
Yeah, it's a win-win for me, who heads up this whole program.
Right.
Councilman Williamson's correct, there's been no teeth behind it. It's something that we've talked about for years.
You gotta have fun.
Also, the one, but this will
Just
get
like-
some of the funding.
I would
It's
like
not
to,
getting you that kind of
I
funding.
just want to add, because I was at these initial meetings and I don't know if we've made this clear. So codes has been told or spoken to at these meetings about the fact that we would help enforce this law. Doesn't mean that we can be an end-all be-all, but if Dave has a problem with what a homeowner did with a tree, his guys are out on routes, they're picking up branches, they're doing stuff. He said, would you be willing to go to the house and cite the people? And that was Codes' role here. So that's why I was in the meetings, because he says, hey, look, if we have this problem,
Yeah,
would your guys look into it?
It's understandable.
So let me ask you another question.
I'm sorry.
Council President Galimi, and then Councilperson Williamson, and then Celeste Friend.
Sorry, I've got a chocolate bar in my mouth real quick here.
Would you like to-
Go to somebody else, let them chew.
No, 2 seconds. No, we're good. In listening to all of this, the key focus has been Tree City USA. So I don't know if this body wants to come together and highlight all the components of the ordinance that are required for Tree City USA. Then,
I did that.
right, and then take all the other components out so we can move forward with everything we need. I think it's the board, right?
Well,
For Tree
no.
City USA.
I have to interrupt. One of the things that Tree City USA requires is an ordinance.
Well, that's required, that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
So pass the ordinance with simply all the things required specifically for the Tree City USA designation.
I think that we did that.
I think most of them are, okay?
Yeah.
But I mean, my point is, we're discussing the fines, we're discussing all that other stuff. I'd like to see, because here's the thing. Mark's been talking about this for years, Dave's been talking about it for years, this has been a focus of yours, Celeste. I mean, this is a good thing for the city. If we could put all the other conversations to the side
Yeah.
and move forward with an ordinance that allows us to gather that designation, that'll allow Dave to work with grant writers to do exactly what you guys are talking about without being concerned about me pruning a tree.
I think there's very little in here that is extraneous in the ways in which you described.
I'm talking about the discussions, though. Sometimes our discussions hold up legislation, even though the legislation may not say it. So that's what I'm getting at.
Can I say one more thing? No.
Councilman Williamson, then you,
Okay.
and then you.
So Dave, going back to the arborists and having dedicated men for all this stuff, we have 2 guys that cut trees now, right? And they work as a team, right? If one goes down, the other guy can't cut, correct?
No, that's false.
But no, you gotta have an A driver though.
The city has dedicated a 3-man crew. 2 guys in the bucket truck, 1 guy in the plow truck. They're all certified to cut. So if 1 guy is out for vacation day or whatever, the other 2 can still operate. So
Okay.
I can still have a crew.
So, and that's just dedicated for trees, damage and everything else. Now the arborists, an arborist actually take care of the trees like Hamilton College and all these other places that these trees, they grew to be very old, over 100 years plus, because they're dedicated arborists to take care of those trees, either by putting some type of medicine on the bark or wrapping it, whatever the case may be. So the vision of the city of Utica, you know, I all want a pretty place like Cooperstown, you know, a nice canopy, and Cornhill be brought back to the way it was years ago with covered streets. However, how are we gonna pay for it? You know what I mean? We can't pay for it. How are we gonna pay for it? That's the question.
So we're currently doing the program now, so I don't think there'll be much change.
What program?
Our urban forestry program.
But nothing's really done. I
We have 3
mean,
guys dedicated to it,
but what I'm saying is we've taken down so many trees, but we haven't even replanted those yet.
because we rely on grants. And those grants come in every other year to do it.
Okay,
And
so,
this
and those
legislation
grants
says that.
sometimes happen and sometimes don't.
That is correct.
So we put in the budget, when we did 40 trees, comes out to $16,000, right? That's 40 trees. We need 40 trees on certain streets. There's no, St. Jane has not one tree on that street, and that's on a hill. You think that would do something with the watershed? Beautiful, but it's not there. So that's what I'm saying, it's like a headline legislation because we can't really do nothing with it. We can't do nothing with it.
It will get us more grants, Mark.
It's not gonna get us more grants.
How do you know that?
Okay.
But anyways, I'm done.
The only thing I wanted to add was that if you look at under the, so 201-5, BD, the board shall support public awareness and education programs relating to trees. I think it'd be great if we got more public awareness of the values of trees so that people understood how they relate to flooding, how they relate to urban, heat island effect, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be, in fact, one of the roles that a board could play would be in helping to educate the public on why trees are important, why you should want them, which ones are better than others, et cetera.
All right, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman DeBrango. Dave Short told us arbiter is around 70,000. Bucket truck, 165. You're looking at over $250,000, guys. Where's the money? As Councilman said, if we had, and now you're saying for the grants. Now you just heard from Dave Short. It's every other year, so we're not getting a reoccurrence or revenues generating revenues every year that are not coming from the taxpayers. So I don't mind doing something like this, but before I put $250,000 into a bucket truck and an arbiter, I'd rather put $250,000 into planting trees. I don't care if it takes me 2 years, okay? We have to think financially, cost effectively for the city taxpayers, and I don't think adding these two items would help us. If we can get grants without the arbiter and the bucket truck, I'd like to do it that way.
Well, remove the chief of staff position,
So,
make him higher.
let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
We already have the bucket truck.
Right.
We already have the claw truck. We already have 3 certified guys to do the tree work.
Okay.
We also have a small dedicated crew to plant the trees along with volunteers. That's what we've been doing.
Oh.
The arborist per this legislation would be myself acting as the arborist. But I rely on the arborists from the Central New York Conservancy as part of their commitment to the city. They provide the 2 arborists at my disposal to help me with the trees throughout the city.
And we fund them. We fund the conservancy, correct?
We fund them for projects such as the flowers on the parkway, and that's about it.
That's right.
That's about a $12,000 commitment.
For annuals.
But we have the ability from those 2 arborists that are certified arborists at our disposal to help us. If they're not available, and also along with certain trees that I'm not able to take care of with my own crew, especially around high tension lines, we contract out to contractors. And we also work closely with National Grid with their trees.
So you're telling me that there is no cost for an arbiter and no cost for a bucket truck?
What I'm telling you is we don't pay for an arborist because I'm already utilizing it in kind through the conservancy.
So we don't need the bucket truck or
And
that?
the bucket truck, we've always had a bucket truck. The last bucket truck you guys approved in a capital.
160-something thousand, yeah.
Which was many moons ago.
So you need
Probably in 2 years, I'll be coming back to ask you
more money.
to upgrade that truck. It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
The last truck went 30 years.
So that's-
And we're trying to,
Extend.
but they do a lot of training. Those gentlemen that got electrocuted, I mean,
That metal cage, that's what you're gonna fry.
a long time ago, when this city didn't even have a forestry program, that's how it all started, because one of our guys did get electrocuted.
Okay.
And
That's why you stay away from power lines.
that started all the program.
All right, Councilperson Friend.
So I just want to make it really clear that the legislation as written designates Mr. Short as the arborist. And there's some vague language in there about, or somebody else he designates in the future if in fact he gets the money to hire somebody. We could take that right out if people would prefer. And we already have the bucket truck. There's nothing in here requires us to spend any more money, and it will make us eligible to apply for some more grants.
Yeah, I
Mr.
feel
Short is
comfortable taking that
already
out.
the arborist. He functions as our arborist. You serve on the New York State, tell me again.
I was an executive member and a regular board member of the New York State Urban Forestry Council.
Plant trees.
So what that means is, New York State DEC, the governor allows them to spend so much money on
Yes,
urban
DEC comes first.
forests. But the governor said you have to set up a committee that oversees that program, and that's what we do.
So we have somebody who, I mean, although you may not be qualified as an arborist by some kind of technical standards, but you function as an arborist, you are our arborist, that's what you're doing, it's what you've been doing for a long time, and it's what this legislation formalizes. But we are not required to spend any money by this legislation.
Okay.
Mr. DeBrango.
Yeah, somebody just texted me about watching something.
I got three, bro.
Go ahead, Judge, and then I'm gonna go with Councilman Beatrice, then Councilman Williamson. I think we're gonna call it quits in 5 minutes on this subject. I think we should put it back in committee and
Right.
just discuss it a little bit further at a later date, so we can finish what's left in committee. But go ahead.
My question is, I look at this permit and permitting. Obviously, the city, with regard to trees that are in the public area, the city can do whatever they want with those trees. They can remove them, trim them, do whatever they want. I look at this permits and permitting, and I'm thinking, who has to get a permit? If I want to put a tree in my front yard, do I have to get a permit? Do I have to get a permit to put a tree in my backyard or my front yard?
No.
Okay, so who's getting a permit then? City can do whatever they wish with
If you want to
property on
if you
front-
wanted to put a
trees
tree
on
in your
property,
right of
city
way,
property.
If you wanted to put a tree, Judge, between the curb and the sidewalk in front of your house, we would say you need a permit, so we know what you're doing.
Well, you can't put a tree curb in the sidewalk because that's city property.
Yeah, but you guys
So how are you gonna put a tree there and you shouldn't be, nobody's ever gotten a needed permit because you can't do it. It's right now, it isn't your property.
Well, the permit is for the city.
So I don't understand, I'm really having a problem with the permit section. Who gets a permit for what? I wanna put a tree in my front yard and it's not between the sidewalk and the curb.
Then you can, you don't need a permit.
Okay, but who needs a permit?
If you're gonna plant it between the curb and the sidewalk.
You can't plant between the sidewalk and city property.
It's city-owned property.
Exactly.
Well, you always had
But
that
you're
right.
looking
You
for
don't need this to
authorization
do
from
that.
you
We're
to
looking
do it.
for authorization so that we know that you're doing it.
You can't, my
You're
point
requesting a
being,
tree.
my point being, I want to bring up 2 points. One is, you never had the right to plant a tree between the sidewalk and the curb, because that's city property, that's number one, so you don't need any legislation for that. Number two, the biggest danger to the public, I think, and is unregulated, is the fact that you come to an intersection and somebody has an 8-foot bush there, and you can't see any traffic coming the other way.
Right.
So there's nothing that really protects you and allows the city to go over and tell you to take that bush down, but you probably should because it does impede the vision of you seeing, and I know there's one run on Culver Ave near South Street. If you're on that, you can't see anything coming up Culver Ave because there's this 8-foot bush there. Now, I'm having trouble with the permit thing, and I'm sorry to say that when, Mr. Georgia, when you were talking, I didn't exactly get all of your comment. I thought the first time I saw this, there was something about private property. They wanted to give permission to go on private property. That's a no-no.
Yeah, and I believe they removed that.
That has so many problems with it.
It's not there.
Number one, it's illegal. Number two, you trying to make it legal is illegal. And also, the liability of ever going on people's property by a city employee is just too
Yeah,
a
they-
big burden to even
Yeah,
think
they've
about.
removed that.
What were you specifically saying? I'm sorry.
Like I said, my issue is just with the permitting in general, because it's talking about,
I don't like the permit either.
you know.
Okay, it's,
And also, you got a board that meets 4 times a year, minimal, must be 4 times a year. I don't know what they get done 4 times a year, if, like, like our board here, we talk about things sometimes for a long period of time because we have doubts. And when you're talking about doing something positive, getting money and grants to do something, then you've got a board deciding whether that is proper.
Yeah, I'm
I
not too
don't
keen
see
on that as well, but.
I don't see that
Yeah,
interference
let me
with
say
your
this.
authority, with his authority, and everybody else's authority, because you might get a grant.
Right, right.
I'm just speaking
We
out loud,
respect your opinion, Judge, thank you.
things that go to my head, that's
All
all.
right. I got Councilman Beatrice, then Councilman Williamson. We're gonna cut it, what
Yeah.
we'll do, and I'll tell you what we're gonna do at the end, but
All
go
right,
ahead.
Mr. Short, just one quick question. Yeah, when you talk about you have a truck, you have 2 guys, basically a crew, 3 guys, okay? That's the crew that when we have a storm or we need trees cut down, they're cutting the trees down,
Mr. Chairman,
correct?
Sometimes
So,
the fire
now
department
wait
as
now.
well.
Mr. Beatrice, there's one thing I didn't add. I thought that Mr. Galimi's suggestion that we do a minimum with an ordinance that allows us to get into that program.
I was gonna say that
Yes,
at the end.
very, very, very minimum, just to get us in there, where we don't really have to spend any money. I don't know
Agreed.
how you get an arborist anyway, and who
All right.
really qualifies. But
So-
if you wanted to get into the money part of it, you should look at an ordinance that gets you into the money part of it with the very minimal impact on the rights of people in the city who constantly are bombarded by government over and over, passing all this legislation. Before you know it, you don't really have control over anything in your life. So I think that's the way I would restudy this
Yeah,
matter.
that's what we'll do.
That's what
Councilman
Ju-
Beatrice.
Yes, just one thing, very quick. So, what I'm asking is, that crew that you're saying is gonna be in charge of planting trees and doing that, is the same crew that takes the trees down when we have problems?
No.
No,
So you got 6 people now in the tree,
there's 3 permanent tree guys on crew.
right,
That's what they do Monday through Friday.
yes.
When there's tree plantings, the other guys in the Parks Department do the tree plantings along with volunteers from the Rotary, the Conservancy, so and so on.
Oh, okay, so who would be going up doing the trimming on these big trees and all that? The people that take the trees down?
The tree crew, yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, and I'm not being disrespectful at all. We've had numerous conversations. We wait weeks. They're on lists. There's people been on lists to have trees down for a year,
Yes.
and they're not planting trees. So how could we say that this crew is gonna be here to do this, what we're trying to do?
I'm not adding any, there's no extra
Wait a
work
minute,
that
wait,
this
wait, wait,
adds.
wait.
It most certainly
What are you
does.
saying?
It doesn't.
The 3 guys are always gonna be cutting or trimming trees, that's what they do. The people planting the trees are separate crew,
Okay.
that's it.
All
You
right,
follow.
Councilman
And that separate crew
Williamson.
really is the guy operating the bobcat to drill the holes.
I know,
Volunteers plant
I
the
know
trees.
that what it takes for people who legitimately have to have a tree cut down and they're on the list for months.
Yes, I do
Right,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
And those people, and the work that they're doing is taking trees down. They're not really going to trim trees to make other trees healthier.
To be perfectly honest with you, we do very little trimming, we do mostly removals.
Okay, all
And
right,
that's because the stock of the trees in the city require them to be removed.
okay.
Councilman Williamson.
Okay, so my save round on this whole thing is, all right, so let's look at, what's a widowmaker?
Widowmaker is a leader or
bad
branch
heart
that's broken
attack.
off at the top of the tree, it's just hanging, ready to
Okay,
fall.
or trees about to fall.
It really relies on
Okay.
the branch itself.
So the park that I was, cleaning up over there on Sherman Drive, I have a lot of widowmakers there.
You do,
And I have a lot of trees that need to come down for years now.
you do.
And you, I mean, they're not gonna try to put another thing on your hat, that you're the arborist, right? The other guys that are tree guys, they're not real arborists.
No,
They're not arborists, they just tree cut, and it's like a 2-week course in Buffalo, even if they went there, right?
it's a longer course. But I-
Okay. But what I'm getting with this whole thing is, I did all that work, we got a lot of liability issues over there in that park, and it still hasn't been done in 3 or 4 years. Maybe because I'm a Republican, that's why they didn't take them down, they left them there, who knows? Or he just didn't have enough time, I don't know. But that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
There's only so much you can do with 3 guys.
That's my point.
Okay, and this is, are we gonna do this right, or are we gonna half-ass it? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. That's all I got. I'm sorry.
Councilperson
I
Friend, then
just
we're gonna
wanted-
end with the attorney.
Okay, I just want to remind people, this doesn't require any extra work, it doesn't require any extra expenditure of money, but it does give our Public Works Commissioner another tool in his tool chest to further the needs of the city in relation to its urban forest. He is saying he wants it, he thinks that this would be helpful to him. Is it gonna be the single solve-all? No, it's not gonna solve all of our problems. I don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is a good piece of legislation that will help to advance some of the important goals of the city, even though there are other problems outstanding, like the ones that, that Joe just described in terms of people having to wait a long time, that Mark described in terms of those widow makers. But it nonetheless will give us another tool in our tool chest to develop a healthier, better urban forest.
And I just want you guys to understand, part of what was sold to me when all this stuff came here, and if you're gonna amend this legislation, if you're gonna introduce legislation, if you're not gonna do anything, was the fact that we had a way to restrict people from planting the trees that do damages to properties.
Right.
Because there are trees that do damages to a lot of properties. We have no way of resolving that.
Right.
Because it's not illegal.
And
So
now-
somebody can say, I want 10 Canadian maples or whatever, and plant them all along their tree line, the neighbor gets pissed, they know what's gonna happen. And we have nothing to say, well, what you did was wrong. But that's up to you guys. I don't think that part of the law has been explained.
Okay.
And
We're gonna finish up with Corporation Council.
I just have 2 quick things, because I didn't get to finish. Section 201-9, it's the same issue. It applies basically to all newly planted trees. I don't know how we would go in and enforce that for people who are doing things in their backyard or whatnot.
Okay, so-
But I don't have a problem with it being either in the city right away or
Okay.
public land.
Thank you.
The other thing is it makes a lot of reference to the city arborist has the right to do X, Y, and Z. Obviously, I know Dave is being designated as a city arborist, but he's obviously having agents going out and cutting the trees. He's not personally doing that. So there needs to be some language to reflect that he has the
Well, they're
authorization to
yes.
designate whoever it may be to cut those trees.
Needs to be changed.
And then the last thing I'll say is, I don't have an issue, I know, Dave wants to be able to know who's planting or removing trees. It's just the extent that we're requiring for permits, spraying trees, or if you're cutting some branches. I mean, I know the mayor goes out on his sweeps and he's cutting branches. I mean, that's technically, he's not getting a permit to do that. I
Never
mean,
seen
he's,
it before.
yeah. So,
Other than the mayor.
so that's why some of these are, problematic in that respect, or I don't know if there needs to be some other language in the permitting
Yeah.
that requires an exception, that if there's a tree that has fallen that is
Well, this is Michael's point.
in the right of way that is posing a threat, that they have the authorization without a permit, something like that to be able to, so that needs to be, I think, fleshed out a little bit more, at least with respect to the permitting for
Oh, very good.
my position.
All right, that's what, I think we'll end this subject, but I think the President made it clear, and I think I agree with him, that let's go to the minimum so we can get involved with the Tree USA, maybe get some special grants, give us some funding to help us out, pay for what we want to do with the trees in the city. So I think this needs some work, this piece needs some work. Let's eliminate, obviously she had some concerns, the judge has some concerns. So we'll eliminate some of the subjects here, try to go with the bare minimum. Let's start with there, and then we add gradually what we can. But I know that you want enforcement, and that's something that we as a council have to look at that. So we have to come up with some sort of enforcement when people are doing things illegally and cutting trees down on city property, which is, it's not right. So we have to come up with some enforcement. I'm gonna end this subject. And I just want to ask any of the members right now, I think we could pick it up in the next session. We'll just reach out back into the committee of the whole and see if there's anything else that we want to discuss in the next session. So we'll give a 5-minute break and then we'll start our pre-meeting conference. Adjourned.
start the pre-caucus meeting, sir. Please take your seats.
So we can have a group session.
I'm just going to start with finishing up some legislation in committee of the whole. We
We do it every Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
please, Your Honor.
Free conference agenda.
We're just some pieces of committee of the whole. We like the properties. Ordinance number 4, Harbor Way. Any discussions with that? Voting on it tonight after the public hearing, of course.
These are things in committee.
These are in the committee of the whole. Next, it was ordinance number 7, Harbor Point, Lee Street, another sale. Again, of course, after the public hearing. Ordinance number 10, the sale of 1661 Steuben Street. Ordinance number 12, the sale of 1507 Sunset Ave. Ordinance number 14, 112 Louisa Street. And ordinance number 16, 1416 Nielsen Street.
We got, I think that's B.
Those are the ones coming out of, Nielsen Street, we're keeping it. Or are we pulling Nielsen Street?
She sent us a thing right here that says.
We have, oh, okay, Nielsen Street we are pulling, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, we are not voting on Nielsen Street, I remember that memo, and we're going to, discard that one.
Yes.
Okay. Which number is that? The Nielsen Street?
Ordinance
The
number
last one.
16.
That's one. So we're pulling out from, ordinance 4 to a 14, that whole
Right.
group.
Correct.
Number 16, you are discharging it?
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
She sent us a-
We cleaned up the, rest of committee of the whole, and let's start the pre-caucus. Go ahead, Frankie DeBrango, go
Just
ahead.
one question. I know we just received this on our desk tonight regarding the ordinance for a temporary moratorium on the convenience stores.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be in our regular packet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all.
Let's start with ordinance number 1. It's a resolution approving, I think, some light locations. I like the locations because they're on, I think, Washbush Road. And, yes, in South Park. Any discussions on putting some more light poles up? Oh, you got something?
I believe it's for the dog park.
Oh, so inside the dog park? Or at the entrance?
In and around that. I didn't prepare the legislation, but I believe it's for the dog park.
For the dog park?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussions on additional light poles with National Grid? All right, let's move on to ordinance number 2.
Who did the legislation?
I like to
'Cause I didn't see it.
defer,
She didn't send a copy. Maybe
if
she
we have
did.
time to discuss the ordinance to
Huh?
amend the
Probably
city
the
code
parking lot.
to the later part of this
Maybe
meeting.
she did, I don't remember.
So number 2 and number 3, at this time, we like to move to committee, but if we have time to discuss, of course, we'll discuss them at the end of the meeting. Our next piece is a Commissioner Deeds for Jeff Daniels. Any discussion? Discussion's closed. Our next piece is calling for a public hearing for the annual estimate. Any discussion? Oh, the date. We have to, Heather,
Yes,
public hearing.
yes.
What sounds good for a date?
Well, you have 2 council meetings, if you want to do it before the council meeting, or if you want a separate date. So you have March 1st and March 15th. March 15th, I was hoping and anticipating that you'd be voting on the budget that night. So,
Okay. Is there any budget meetings? They're all prior to that, correct?
yes.
Yes.
Is the council, any objections for the public hearing for the annual estimate for March 15th, our council meeting? Any discussion? Okay, discussion is closed. Annual estimate, public hearing, March 15th. Our clerk, you okay with that? Everybody good? Okay. Our next piece is the annual estimate. I'm going to request my colleagues to refer this to committee until we have a number.
Councilman Miola,
Yes.
just procedurally, not that it matters. Can we introduce the estimate before we call for the public hearing?
Sure, if you want.
Okay.
That'd be fine. We're going to put it in committee anyways, but we can. do
Right.
that. We can do that.
Okay.
All right, we can do that during your meeting if you don't mind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Why don't you introduce her for the first meeting for March 1st?
Yes. Yeah. Our next piece of legislation is resolution number 7, call for a public hearing for the sale of 500 and 504 Columbia Street. This is sponsored by Councilwoman Aiello. Councilwoman Aiello, are you in favor of the sale?
Yes.
Number
Can I ask a question about that? I know that we've talked about this before. Shouldn't it be for sale for $1 as opposed to being for sale for nothing? Isn't that not a sale but a gift?
I would have to address my urban renewal colleagues.
Right.
Gentlemen?
Shouldn't we amend this to be $1?
I know we had some discussion.
Right, you're right.
Yeah, and I think we said that it was gonna be amended. It doesn't matter. It's just the formality of
Right.
the,
But she's right, it should be $1.
MVHS is ultimately paying the purchase price, though.
yeah.
MVHS is ultimately paying the purchase price, though.
Right.
This was taken through eminent domain by urban renewal. We're
Right.
transferring it to MVHS.
Right.
So that they can demolish it and put it in a
No,
parking lot.
I get all that, and that's
But
all good.
MVHS is ultimately paying Mr. Cancilla, who's the previous owner.
Oh, right, but they're getting it from us, and that's going through us. It just, I mean, like she says, it's a formality, but it just seems very odd to say we're gonna sell it to you for $0. Like, that's not a sale, that's a gift.
We just sold the property to the James Street,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know, and we raised, and you yourself raised the same concern then.
sold it for $0.
Right.
Because we're partnering the project overall.
And this was going through eminent domain.
Okay.
you understand. All right. Number 8 is the sale of the property, refer to committee. Number 7 is the public hearing. Everybody okay? Okay. Yeah, Heather?
So I just, because Sarah did send it to me, that legislation is not for lights for the dog park, it's for an easement for National Grid and Verizon to get through the dog park so that we can put up lights, because you don't have it.
Oh, it's for an easement for the park.
Yeah, it's not lights itself. Yep.
Our next piece,
I know, it just seemed to be a question, so.
our next piece of legislation is a resolution sponsored by Councilman Burmaster for the sale of 1226 Capitol Ave and 1231 Gray Ave. Councilman Burmaster, you okay with this sale?
If you need me to talk on this, I will.
I met with him this morning.
Okay, good, you're aware.
I am aware, and I think it's a great idea.
Great idea.
So gentlemen, you're good with this?
Yes.
Okay. The calling for the public hearing is number 9, and number 10 needs to be referred to committee. Any additional discussion on those 2 pieces? My colleagues are okay with that? Okay. Our next piece of legislation is calling for Commissioner of Deeds for Anthony Myers. Any discussions? Discussion is closed. Our next piece of legislation is calling for a Commissioner of Deeds for Timothy Julian. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. Our next piece of legislation is calling for another Commissioner of Deeds for Jack Lemenico. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. Our next piece, any piece from this, looks like this day forward, this piece forward, needs to see Thursday rule waiver. Anybody objecting to supporting that? Okay. We'll continue our discussion on the rest of this these pieces of legislation then. Resolution number 14, calling for Commissioner Deeds from Michael Pagano. Michael, you have something?
Oh, I just want to say that Commissioner Deeds are an exception in the rules of order for Thursday rule. So
You don't have to waive the Thursday rule.
you don't have to waive the Thursday
You
rule for
never
any of
have
the
to,
Commissioner
right,
Deeds.
right.
Okay, I just saw the Y up on top and it's on.
Yeah.
Okay.
They came in after Thursday, but we don't have to waive them. We don't have to waive them.
No waive Thursday rule for Commissioner Deeds. Gotcha. Okay. Our next piece of legislation, Alfred Galimi, is he a relative, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody in favor, or who opposes? Okay.
Next one's everyone's favorite, English.
Galimi. Another relative, Michael.
She was mine.
All in favor? Okay. We'll move this piece also. Oh, another one, Michael. Mr. President, would you like a Commissioner Deeds?
I will.
Thank you. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. Amanda Daniels, another Commissioner of Deeds. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. I'm assuming our clerk's got all the information.
I'll draw Utica resident.
Regina Venatozzi, another Commissioner of Deeds. Discussion? Discussion's closed. Commissioner deeds for Michael Gentile. Discussion? Discussion is closed. Our next piece of legislation that has to do with the codes, I like to right now refer this to later on this evening with this meeting, as long as we have more time. It's number 21. Again, that would have to go to committee anyways. Same thing with number 22. It has to do with our zoning code amendment. I like to discuss it later on if we have time. If not, we can discuss it at a committee of the whole. Our next piece of legislation also, number 23, amending the zoning code. Similar committee. If we got time, we'll discuss it. Our next piece of legislation is Commissioner Deeds requesting Stephen referral. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. Our next piece of legislation, Commissioner Deeds, Richard Tomanio. Any discussion? Discussion is closed. Tomanio. Our next piece of legislation was not in our package, but it was done tonight to make sure we have time, an additional 45 days. It's sponsored by Councilwoman Cosmo Testa. It's adding another 45 days to the convenience store legislation. Is there any discussion? Everybody good with this?
Yeah, we're good with it. We're trying to get things done in
Absolutely.
a timely manner, so hopefully 45 days is enough. Thank you.
Everybody okay with that? Very good. It is an ordinance, and we need unanimous on this. Any opposed? Very good. Our next piece of legislation is a Board of E&A transfer. Again, this wasn't in our package. Our budget director, Heather Mowat, is here. And Heather, would you give us a summary of this transfer?
Is it the $14,000 one?
$14,000 one, yes.
We have had several accidents within DPW. We always do, but we had one that was a lot more expensive than we expected. And so we did get the insurance funds, but this was to do the repair.
I have a couple of questions. One, I think a Thursday rule is required for this.
Well, we did it for the rest of the legislation.
Okay, so once, well, except the other ones don't need it. Oh, transfers don't need them. Okay. And then the other question I have is this is 14,000 and the threshold for ordinances is 15,000. Is this a cumulative question? Have we already?
I don't see it cumulative on here.
So I don't believe that you
Yeah.
need us to ordain this.
You do, and you'll see that later in the packet. Later in the packet, there's another one coming out of DPW Garage Electric for 15,000. So
Okay.
for full transparency, even though both of them, or one of them would have been under 15,000, put them together, it's 29,000. So that's why I included it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All set? Any other discussions on number 27? Okay.
Yeah, but it's still, you're still transferring a total of 30 out of it, so it still should come out.
That's
Right.
why it's here.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
what she's saying.
Yeah, that's why it's here.
She
Yeah.
just said.
They caught me too, but then I remembered.
Heather, number 28 is a $20,000 transfer for the fire mechanic repairs. Would you like to tell us about that?
So from time to time, we have expenditures related that we haven't accounted for through the budget. And, as our fleet ages, we have increases in costs. So that's all this is related to.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? Discussion is closed on number 28. Our next board, E&A transfer number 29. Heather, it's for fire line physician fees, $30,000.
Yes, so we applied for several grants this year, the SAFER grant and also for generators. And so there were grant application fees we didn't expect. We also had a Lexapol subscription that was a little higher than we expected, and also some survey services that we had to do in anticipation of Station 1, Station 4, Central, and Station 7.
Any questions for Heather? Okay, discussion is closed on 29. We're going to 30. 30 is the transfer for 15,000 and for both parks maintenance and DPW garage, electrical and contractual.
Yes, so As you may recall, our Liberty Bell fountain has not worked for several years. There was electrical and plumbing issues. There was flooding issues in the building next door. So this covers the balance of what was owed. It was about $30,000 in total. I know that Councilperson Aiello may have shared with you, we did have some brick come down today on our wall right there by Liberty Bell fountain. And so I know engineering was on site trying to make sure it was shored up properly. The fire department was there, also I think the police department. So I'll probably be back to you for a transfer for the repair of that wall.
Even though that's a private.
It's partially ours.
We had a survey done and the property line actually runs down the middle of the
Yeah.
brick.
But they did have a contract, it's owned by a private building to repair it. They just didn't finish the repairs.
Not of that, not of Liberty Well, not of the,
Where the brick fell of the
yeah,
sunburst?
yeah, that's, yeah.
The
We
cer-
haven't-
the-
They
we-
have a contract.
We own the surface.
Right, but they still have a contractor that didn't finish the repairs, they were rehabbing.
No, we do. That's the repairs that Stephanie's overseeing in engineering. They assessed the wall as unsafe, and then we hired a contractor to start the repairs. It was, well, I don't wanna say the contractor's name, but they started the repairs and they did the best they could to stabilize it for winter. They gotta finish the rest in the spring because of when they started. So they were scheduled to fix that in the spring anyway.
Right, no, I know that.
Now it's just, when are they gonna finish? But that's us. That's not the private owner.
It's our, yeah, it's us.
It's us paying for it because we own the brick on the outside of the wall.
We own the facade.
Yes.
Should we sell it back to the owner?
It's,
I mean, really.
No, but that's one of the
Did
reasons.
you guys buy the site of my house?
Probably not after today.
You guys wanna buy the site of my house?
But no
you
kidding.
can.
it's a party, there's an issue because it's a party wall. So there's a lot of,
The building that was there.
yeah, so there's a lot of issues with the
I
wall.
know the person that owns the building too, I'm saying that's why I know, I understand that there's a contractor, that's what I'm just.
But no, that was part of why, I mean, the alley walls too in Franklin Square, and then that wall in Liberty Bell, that's part of why, like, we get guff for putting money into fixing those things. But this is why, I mean, those walls were gonna collapse, that's why
Oh,
we had to
right. No,
redo.
they did collect.
Yeah,
You can tell it was where the chimney was.
yeah.
Any additional discussion?
No?
Okay, we're on number 31, City Hall maintenance, electrical, 41,000, Heather.
Yes, a lot going on here. Just 2 weeks ago, we had problems with our doors, and our doors had to come off. So we've done work on our front doors, the common council doors. We've had a pest control problem here. We had won't get into all the details, but pretty significant. And so that was totally unexpected. We've had to bomb the building several times.
I thought I was the only pest here.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I'm not gonna say it, but, okay. When we did Hannah Park over, we needed light towers, because the lights hadn't come in on time. And so there's just a variety of things happening here.
Okay, any additional discussion on that transfer, number 31? Okay, we're closed on that. I'd like to go, we do have a half an hour. I'd like to see if we can get through some of the, amending the city code ordinances. Let's start with number two.
Goodbye.
Neighborhood retail, convenience store, and smoke shop.
Enjoy yourself, Marcus. I believe so.
Can I just ask a couple questions on this? So Marcus is here, so I'm familiar with all this, because, is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
We get Marcus's attention first.
So Marcus,
Yo,
on this convenience store legislation that's been here for a year that we just keep trying to pass and keeps getting pushed upstairs, and it was supposed to be coming through last week and we don't see it. So I just want I want to know a couple things.
sure.
So in this legislation that we're going to pass, what is the cap on, that we set for the convenience stores? Is it 42 in the city? Is that what we set?
I don't know what the cap that you set is. I know what, one of the council people asked me how many convenience stores and smoke shops are in the city, and I sent him that number.
What's
There
that?
is no cap as far as I know.
Okay, but right now, there's 42 convenience stores in there.
There's,
Hang
no.
on, let me find where I sent it to.
I believe there's 29 convenience stores and 13 smoke
29
shops.
convenience stores, 13 smoke shops. I do want to say with the caveat, there's one convenience store that we missed, so we got to go back and get it.
Okay.
So I think there's,
So basically, between the two, it's 42 then? Between the two, right?
yeah, but I think it's 43.
Okay, so we'll call it 43.
Yeah.
So going forward here, we're gonna cap a number on it.
Right.
And no, that's our intention, okay, is to cap a number on that, okay? In the meantime, until this passes, you have 7 applications, but they're going nowhere until our legislation gets passed.
Well, we technically can't do that. So what happened is, during the moratorium, now you guys are just gonna pass another moratorium today, so that's fine. During the moratorium, we didn't take applications. We said there's a moratorium, we're not taking applications. The number that I gave you guys, 7, informally, were the amount of people that approached us during the course of that time and said, why can't I do this now?
So you have no applications right now?
Right.
Okay, and you will have no applications until we pass something, correct?
Until you
So
go
anything that I'm reading all over the place
Well,
is
if
not
the
true.
moratorium expires and you guys don't renew it,
Right,
then we will
then you can,
process
but we're gonna renew it, so,
Right, but there was a couple days gap there that was a little suspenseful.
okay,
But, yeah.
okay. So that's where we are right now. There's not 40 people trying to open smoke shops, and there's not,
We think there's 7, and
Okay.
one, and I don't wanna get into it,
Well,
but there's one that we think would be
and I
problematic for you guys.
And I just wanna make it clear, it's not, Marcus can't control if someone opens a smoke shop if it's allowed right now.
Right.
It's any authorization from a city agency to give permission to do something, building permit, license, anything like that. So someone theoretically could open a convenience store but not get the necessary licenses that they need.
but then we'd shut them down if we went there.
We would try it.
We would try. Well, if they don't have the proper
Right.
certification, you would shut them down.
The law
Okay,
doesn't
so
work as
that,
efficiently as the
okay,
Utica City government
so,
does.
so if we pass this 45 days, like, hopefully we're all gonna, okay? In 45 days, we already been a year, but in 45 days, we have to pass this, and nobody can open anything else up
In those 45 days.
in those 45
The
days.
46th day they can.
Yes, but hopefully we're not
And
at that
my,
point. Okay,
my fear is, just so you know, Councilman Beatrice, there are certain groups, legitimate businesses, good businesses, that, work with a lot of these stores, to make sure that they're in compliance with our laws and regulations. And so, a lot of times, when you get one, you get more than one, because they all work through the same sort of business
Right.
facilitators.
and I'm not trying to shut anybody down that's already
No,
open.
I
I'm
want
just
you to
talking
know,
moving, going
if one guy
forward.
applies, it's likely to come with more applications, because they all use the same people.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Joe?
Yep.
All right, so the intent of this legislation is what we are looking for, but both our counsel, Judge Garamone and Stephanie DeGiorgio, are going to give it a little bit more critique it and give it a little bit more, be a little more specific in different areas, because we wanted to have our codes officer have no problem enforcing this in the future, so that's why we're leaving it in committee. They're going to give us a revision, and we'll decide from there. Joey?
One more question.
Go ahead.
So, we've been February 3rd, 2021, we're now February 15th, 2 years later. So, can we get this done in 45 days?
No
'Cause,
problem at all.
I mean, because this is, enough is enough with this. I mean, we need to stop it, it's a problem, we need to get it done. It's been 2 years now. So, I just would hope, and I'm just frustrated by it, and you can probably tell that, but we just need, we need to get this done, one way or another.
We're all in favor of getting it done, Joseph.
Thank you.
All these
the ne-
ordinances also have to go to the zoning board.
One piece has to go to planning board, correct? Your Honor.
I think the moratorium presently that we have expires on the 15th of February.
That's correct, Your Honor.
So the 45-day ordinance you have that was put in tonight was to give you the time that you need. I think you ought to pass it, because you're not ready to do anything else tonight anyway. Mr. Giorgio and I have been talking about this, and what we have given you is something for you to contemplate. We did it the way we did it. I did it, actually, and I told her, you may have objections, they may have objections, but at least have something on paper that you can look at and decide how you want to change it. We can always do that. So we have to have legislation in committee, because one of them is the zoning ordinance, one is the licensing ordinance. The zoning ordinance has to go to the planning board anyway, if, in any event, you have to send that anyway. So I think you've given yourself enough time in the 45 days. And I would suggest that you pass that tonight. And, and we'll refer whatever you have in committee to the planning board, because that's a zoning board change. And that also can be changed too, because when you get the recommendation, they may tell you to do something else. Any other questions about that?
I just.
Councilman
have a question.
DeBrango.
I know in ordinance number 3, it does not exceed 42. We could change that at a later date to 43.
Yeah, we can
And
amend it for, I
wanted to
already
be-
made my
I want to be
initial.
fair to everybody who has a convenience store in the city now, and I don't want to take away from that.
Correct.
So they are grandfathered in, and after that, when 43 goes back to 42, then we'll be able to take someone off the list who's on the list to open up another store. So the maximum amount will be 43.
Correct.
All right.
Can-
Everybody's good at amending.
I have a question on that. Is that could the zoning board of appeals override that? Could somebody go to the ZBA and ask to?
Could they get
So-
a variance?
An area
So-
variance, she suggested
So-
an area variance.
Could
So
you get a
essen-
variance on the total number?
So, yes, there's other, which is why this has got to sit in committee, there's other issues with this grandfathering in and setting this number, because you can get variances for the businesses, and I don't know necessarily that that's consistent with this. And if the regulation of having only 42 is put into the zoning code, it technically, if they want to apply and get one, they can seek a variance from the zoning code to be able to allow to do that, so.
Would that be a use
on one second,
variance or
Joe.
Okay.
or an area? I guess it would be a
Well-
use variance?
It,
It's a weird variance, right?
Yes.
well, you're also seeking to change the location of where they are, so it probably will be a
It would depend on the-
combination,
Yeah, it depends on the applicant, like what's the issue that they're appealing?
What are they applying for, too?
yeah.
Okay. Set, Councilman?
yeah, thank you.
Councilman Beatrice?
Yes, so that being said, in this legislation, is there anything that we can put that even if they got a variance, it comes in front of the council where we have a say on it?
I don't believe so.
None of the legislation states that, and most of it goes in front of the zoning board.
The zoning board is a governing authority. Anytime we make a zoning decision in codes, they can give an appeal process. We were faulty, or there was some kind of extenuated circumstances, then you just rely on the zoning board to adjudicate that. But whatever
Yeah,
law,
fine.
they have to have a right to appeal, because I can't just be the guy that says no,
Right.
and then there's nobody above it.
And there's an appeal to the zoning board, too. They can go to court
They
for
can go
it.
to the state board, you're right. So,
I'm fine
it
with
is
that.
what it is. Anything you're gonna do, they're gonna be able to appeal, even if you pass it.
Any other discussion? Again, this piece is going to committee, number 3. Our next piece is number 21. This is, let's see, the definition of neighborhood retail. We're going to separate some of this. Some of it has some connotations on different stores, like furniture stores and stuff like that. We just want to clear up the language so it's
What are you
better.
on now?
It's got to be more specific. In other words, we don't want to comply with furniture stores or an average.
What are you on now? Which?
Number 21.
That's why you should have just kept neighborhood retail by itself. I mean, not for nothing, I'm not saying this, just because I put the pieces of legislation together. But the pieces that I had proposed to the common council actually made sense. So, I mean, you could take that piece even with your cap with the 42, and still pull out those little pieces, and it would make a lot more sense than what I just read.
Well, we could discuss that with
We did
Stephanie
take
and the
some
judge
of
later.
I saw
Sam.
that, but that was what I'm saying, is that when we had that the old ordinance with neighborhood retail,
Right.
All right.
it covered all those things that we had discussed. You know, so just as a side.
Any other discussion on number 3? 21 is, of course, going into committee. Okay. Next one is number 22, which looks very familiar. Again, that's going into committee for any type of critiquing with the language. And number 23 is going to do the same on the deletion. Is there any other business? Joseph?
So, let me ask you a question. So this all came out, we're putting it in committee.
Correct.
We gonna call a committee meeting so we can vote on this and get it together? Or what are we
Absolutely.
gonna do?
Councilman DeBrango will be leading that.
You are. We are gonna have one
I
within the.
just want to make sure that the language is right, and as soon as I get the okay,
Okay,
we will call that
Let
meeting.
somebody sue us.
But I
Oh.
gotta make sure,
okay,
I give everybody ample amount of time.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any more discussion for the pre-caucus meeting? We can adjourn for about 15 minutes. I'm sorry, Councilman?
Made a motion, this, sure, can I get a second?
Second. All in favor? Meeting's adjourned.
Common Council to order. It's 7:02.
Yeah.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Aiello, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Irvin, Beatrice, Williamson, Classimo, Testa, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Common Council has a first order of business this evening. It's the minutes from the previous meeting. It's been posted to Eco 360 for the public and council to review.
I thought we could read them tonight, Mr.
All
President.
right, I'll get them up.
Now, I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Okay. We have a second from Williamson. Any opposed? The minutes have been accepted.
Nobody thinks I have a sense of humor.
What if one day I just read them? Just like lose your mind over that one, yeah. The next order of business is the public hearing. We have a public hearing in the following pieces. Ordinance 4, designating a new name for Harbor Lock Road. Ordinance 7, ordinance designating names for Lee Street and Harbor Point Road. Ordinance 10, sale of 1661 Stu Bench Street. Ordinance 12, sale of 1507 Sunset Avenue. And ordinance 14, the sale of 112 Louisa Street. We have no one signed up.
Discharge, 16's gonna be discharged.
Yeah, that one's, we're not doing that. We have no one signed up to speak on behalf of any of those pieces, so the public hearing is now closed. Do we have a motion to remove ordinance 4, designating a new name for Harbor Lock Road to Harbor Way from committee?
Motion.
Motion from Miola, second from DeBrango. Any opposed to pulling that from committee? All right, it's on the floor. And as soon as I pull it out of the packet here, I'll read the proper statement. There it is. Yeah, there's 2 floors. Ordinance designating new name for Harbor Lock Road to Harbor Way. Be it ordained, the portion of streets in Harbor Point area as shown on the attached map and formerly named Harbor Lock Road shall be renamed and designated Harbor Way. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Do we have a motion to remove ordinance 7?
Mr. President, I just want to make sure that we check post office and 9/11 for these renaming the streets also.
They, want to speak on it?
Yes, absolutely.
That's the reason that they were changed. Per them, there was 2 roads
Okay.
in 9/11, 911 center
Okay.
wanted it changed that way.
But we also have to notify the post office? Okay.
Do we have a motion for ordinance 7? No, it's fine.
Right.
All right, we got Miola and DeBrango. Any opposed to removing those from committee? All right, ordinance 7 is the ordinance designating names for Lee Street and Harbor Point Road. Be it ordained, the portion of the streets in Harbor Point area currently shown in the official map as portion of Washington Street and Lee Street shall be renamed and designated Harbor Point Road and Lee Street West respectively as shown on the attached map. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Do we have a motion to remove ordinance 10 from committee? Viola? DeBrango is the second. Any opposed? An ordinance approving the designation of Claudio Edmundo Moya Dumbai Avila as an eligible and qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 of GML for the purpose of the sale of 1661 Stu Bench Street from the URA for a sum of $40,000. It's on the floor for a vote.
9 E's adopted.
Opposed Proposed ordinance 12, Miola.
Yep.
Williamson's the second. That's 1507 Sunset Avenue. Any opposed? Pulling that from committee. On the floor, ordinance approving the designation of Blanco and Son Realty as an eligible and qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 of GML for the purpose of 1507 Sunset Avenue for a sum of $250 from the URA. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Proposed ordinance 14, Neola. Second from DeBrango. Any opposed to pulling those from committee? Or that from committee? Okay. Ordinance approving the designation of George Torres as an eligible and qualified project sponsor for the purpose of the sale of 112 Louisa Street for a sum of $250 from the URA. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Commissioner Thomas, you have anything on this? You're good?
Mr. President, I'd like to discharge ordinance number 16.
There's a motion to discharge ordinance 16. Is there a second?
Second.
Flossmoor Test is the second. Any opposed to discharging that legislation? Okay. Moving on to public comment period. First speaker this evening is Jim Buswell. Come to the podium. The Common Council has provided you a copy of section 3244 public comment period rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name for the record. You may begin.
Jim Boswell. Last October 1st at 5 o'clock, there was an accident at the intersection of Nielsen and James. Reason that there was an accident there was because it was an unprotected intersection. The stop signs on Nielsen, north and south, had been removed by the contractor hired by the city to redo the sidewalks. So a friend of mine brought this to me and asked me my advice, and I have given it to her. But I also have done some research since this happened, and come to find out there's some very interesting scenarios that could happen within the city. First of all, there has never been any legislation for stop signs north and south at Nielsen. Therefore, why were the stop signs up there without any legislation? So I brought this to the councilman from the 4th Ward and the councilman from the 5th Ward for their advice. And they entered into legislation to put it on the books. Further into my delving, I found that between Mohawk Street and Oneida Street and up as far as the Parkway and down as far as Arthur Street, there were 24 more intersections that don't have legislation for stop signs. It leads to the one big question. If there's 24 pieces of legislation that need to be put into effect for these stop signs, how many are there for the rest of the city? So I will give each one of you council people a little challenge. Do a little research. See how many of your stop signs are legal and how many aren't. And before the police department has a problem with writing tickets for people failing to stop at stop signs, back them up and do the work for them so that they don't get looked at court as, why do you have me here? Because there's no legislation on the books. I'm sure you'll be surprised at the number of stop signs that are up don't have legislation on the books, because in looking through the list of legislated stop signs, it's pretty meager compared to the intersections that we have within the city. With that said, I would suggest that you possibly appoint a citizens committee to assist you in finding all these intersections that don't have proper legislation. Don't overburden a police department that's already overburdened with having to go out and do this. Don't overburden yourselves with all the things that you do day in and day out to help the city grow. By getting the citizens involved, you will help yourself. With that said, I'll leave it to your imagination. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can we just have a point of order? And I agree that stop signs should be legislated
So,
for, but I
well-
just wanted to add really quickly that people shouldn't, just because the stop sign's
Let's-
up, they still shouldn't go through
Let's,
intersections.
correct, but let's, if you have to interact with any of the public comment, we'll save it for remonstrances as the, right, thank you. Next speaker this evening, Ron Vincent, thank you. The Common Council provided you a copy of section 3244, public comment period rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name for the record. You may begin.
My name is Ron Vincent. Tonight, as I look around, I see 3 people sitting at our table, and up there, of the 4 people that are running for mayor of the city of Utica. I got thinking about some things. I'm quite sure the 3 people that are here tonight know quite a bit about the budget and things that the time that they've served here. But 11 years ago, when the now administration came in, we had zero extra money in the kitty, the budget, in case of emergencies. According to an article in the Rome newspaper, we're up to $14.1 million, which I commend the administration for doing. It's something that's needed to make the city look like it's active. It helps get money if we need to borrow it at a better rate and things like that. But also, I'm just a citizen. I do come to a lot of meetings. I look into a lot of things. Out of the 60-some thousand people that live in the city of Utica, you don't usually see too many citizens coming to these meetings and knowing a lot of stuff that goes on in the city. There's not much communication between the city and the average homeowner, taxpayer, citizens of the city of Utica. There hasn't been for years. And a lot of people are always asking questions, making remarks, thinking about things. The only time they go to the Common Council people is if they got a problem. Well, one thing that bothers me, out of the 3 people that are sitting here tonight that are running for mayor, God bless you. I wish you all the best of luck. May the best person win. But I feel sorry for that best person. Because 11 years ago, when we didn't have a surplus budget, the city of Utica, I was told, and I've seen on the budget sheets that you get before you, at that time, the city of Utica was like $42 million in debt. Last year, because I haven't seen the new budget this year, I was told it was like 90-something million in debt. So that 14 million surplus doesn't hold a candle to the approximately $50 million that this city has gone in debt over the last 11, 12 years. If this goes on, the person that's going to be mayor has to face that problem and try to stop it. Every Common Council meeting I come to, or quite a few of them, all I hear about is bond for this, bond for that, bond for this, borrow for that, borrow for that. And it just keeps adding on to that deficit that the city's in. The taxpayers don't even know about that. 99% of the citizens in this city don't know about it. I don't know if they blame somebody, if they feel bad or what. But eventually, things like that have to be paid off. Just like our federal government. $31.5 trillion? That's like an average of $250,000 for every person that lives in this country. Everybody says, what's that gonna do to my family? Myself, personally, it don't bother me. I have no kids, I have no grandchildren. I have nobody beyond my life. But I feel sorry for everybody else's. And it's time that the city does something. They talk about the city growing. How is it growing? They talk about downtown, how great downtown's become. Look at our downtown. We got a couple of coffee shops, a cupcake place, maybe a restaurant or two. Any retail? No. We don't have a downtown. All we got is a 2-lane road that the lanes are even smaller than the sidewalks that you walk on. And all you see down there is nonprofits. And what businesses you do have, every one of them, or 90% of them, are all pilot programs. They don't help our tax base. They don't help pay our taxes. Eventually, okay, it'll come up somewhat. But we got to look to the future, folks. We got to stop borrowing money. We got to find ways to make money, pay off the debt, and try to improve the city. And it's going to be tough without a downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. The next and last speaker this evening is Thomas Carcone. Please approach. The Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes, I am.
State your name for the record. You may begin.
Tom Carcone, IFF Local 32, Utica Professional Firefighters Association President. Here today to discuss the public safety meeting that happened a few weeks ago while I was out of town. We've been, as most of you know, we've been without a current contract since 2018 for the Utica firefighters. Regardless of the fact that we haven't had a current contract since 2018, it's never been the position of the administration to address the council in regards to our negotiations. Last month, while I was away getting training for my union position, the city came to a public safety committee meeting without it being on the agenda, without notification being given to the employee organization, which I represent, or without it being notification given to the public. Most importantly, the negotiation team for the city decided to bring their attorneys and their whole negotiating team to try to address this council. For the council members that would not accept that and wouldn't allow that to take place and adjourn the meetings, I would like to say thank you, and we appreciate your recognition for the representation of our members not being present. For those, or if there was any meetings that continued following the adjournment of that meeting, I would hope that anybody that participated in those would be held accountable. And it's recognized that the voice is not, of our organization is not recognized by you, and the notification to the public and them being able to see what's being discussed is a disservice. If that didn't take place, then I apologize, but if it did, I would hope that that's brought to light. As far as our negotiations go, a few days later, the city sent out documents regarding our negotiations. The documents were from March of 2022, which was not our last proposal that we left to the city. I did send it out through Council President Galimi from our September proposal that was the more current and more accurate to where we were at the time that we filed for arbitration, to put at rest any confusion. In addition, I'd like to make it clear that the estimated costs on those budget proposals, or on those proposals, estimated cost to the budget that was put in red and green, that was never seen by our union, and that was added to those proposals, and they were not part of the original documents that were at the table at the time of negotiations, nor does the union agree with the numbers that have been added to those documents. I would hope they would be disregarded and I would hope that the March proposal be replaced by the September proposal. That aside, yesterday we also did receive a PERB arbitration decision regarding the city imposing a self-insurance plan upon the members of IFF Local 32 without an agreement, in direct violation of our collective bargaining agreement. During the decision and within the award, or within the analysis and then in the award, the arbitrator did clarify that the city imposing the self-insurance on us without coming to agreement did put us at a disadvantage during the negotiation period. And the judge's award is that the city will have to go back to a fully funded insurance plan by December 31st if they do not come to an agreement with the firefighters on this issue. For you guys to be fully transparent, as you know, our renewals run from April 1st to April 1st, which would make it impossible for the city to renew for a full calendar year if they don't have an agreement in place, with a December 31st deadline to have us back in a fully funded plan. So the impact from what we were told from other union leaders at the last healthcare committee meeting would change the impact of the budget for $11 million, which their current estimate on health insurance costs for the next calendar year, upward to $14 million for the next calendar year, which would be a $3 million differential. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but I know budget season is coming up. I know the renewal period is coming up, and these are the things that should be discussed instead of the ongoing negotiations that put us at a disadvantage when the city violated our collective bargaining agreement. Outside of that, my guys are still working. The other night, they were in conditions at Central Fire Station where the temperature was 47 degrees within our fire station while we worked a 24-hour shift. We continue to work without a raise since 2020. We didn't receive a dollar of the ARPA funding, regardless that the Department of Treasury gave guidelines for essential workers. And let me remind you, your firefighters were the only ones out there providing medical service during this medical pandemic. We have other fire stations that are still falling apart. We don't have any additional staffing. We have less staffing than we had in 2011, and our call volume has doubled. And currently, we're making about $20,000 less as a full-paid firefighter than a full-paid patrolman. As the budget comes out, I watch year after year the police budget increase, which now I believe is at 38% of the total city budget, as the fire department's budget stays stagnant at 28%. I don't know if the ARPA funding is being used to supplement the repairs to our fire stations that'll eventually fall on the taxpayers. And I don't think it's appropriate that the usages are being held until after the budget season's done, when it'll be too late to apply it to direct relief to the taxpayers. I know you guys are in this room. I know you guys want to do a good job, but we need to start paying attention. And somebody needs to be a champion in here for the people that are champions for you every day. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker this evening. We're going to move on to common council guests, to which we have none. We have no communications from the mayor. Reports from the city officers. Deputy Chief Noonan.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel DeGiorgio.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Thomas.
Nothing to report.
Chief Ingersoll.
No report.
Okay. Moving on. We do have a cash report, I believe.
City of Utica cash report for January 2023 is $62.151 million received and filed.
Thank you. Petitions, remonstrances, and appeals. First District, Councilmember Keith Ayala, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. All I have tonight is next Tuesday, 2 to 4 p.m. is my monthly constituent office hours at my coffee shop at Character Coffee. So stop on down if you have questions or thoughts or ideas. So next Tuesday. Thank you. That's all tonight.
Thank you. Second District, Councilmember Robert Burmaster, you have the floor. You voted.
Yeah, I did. I voted for myself, no. Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything to pass this time.
Thank you very much. Third District, Councilmember Celeste Friend, you have the floor.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Fourth District, Councilmember Majority Leader Frank Miola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I just want to thank Jimmy Boswell for all his assistance with stop signs and the locations that he brought to the table. In addition to that, I agree with him. If council members, you go through an intersection, you don't see a stop sign, and you think there should be something there, let's move forward and get it done. I know that we know that things should be stopped, but a lot of the younger generation, they don't see a stop sign, they're going to go right through it. And believe me, I see a lot of vehicular confrontations because of that. So a stop sign could save a life. So if you have time, take a look at it, see if it's legislated. Let's get those signs put up. Thank you.
Thank you. Fifth District, Councilmember Venice Irvin. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you go down West Street to Johnson Park, you'll see a lot of construction going on. They have a lot of fencing going on. They're about to start building some of the additional buildings to Johnson Park Center, and what they're doing down there with the women that are coming out of rehab and out of prison situations. I think they're building 4 buildings. Right now, I think they're going to take the buildings, from what I understand, the buildings are coming down, and they're going to put up new buildings. And I think they have their funding for their community center, and they're clearing space for the 60-unit housing thing that they're building for seniors and other people that are going to be moving in. So if you go down there and it looks like a prison, there's fencing all over the place. And that's just to make sure that the public is safe. And I did have conversations with people in Ward 5 about the lack of stop signs and the fact that we do have a lot of stop signs. And we also talked about the fact that nobody follows the directions of the stop signs. They just zoom right through them. I mean, Johnson Park, we have 4 entrances into Johnson Park, and nobody stops at the stop signs. And my wife and I stop them all the time and point at the stop signs. So stop signs aren't really the problem. The problem is that people, and it's the younger generation and some of the older generation, they don't pay attention to stop signs. They don't pay attention to lights. They're zooming right through them. So that's what I talk to the people about. We're going to try to correct as much as we can, you know, in District 5, and try to get more information out to parents to talk to their kids, because they're disregarding the stop signs all over the city of Utica right now. And I think that's a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Joe Beatrice, 6th Ward, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just, before the pandemic, I used to have on the 4th Monday of every month before the neighborhood meeting, I used to have, I don't know if you want to call it office hours or my own separate meeting. So starting this February, the 27th, which will be the 4th Monday of the month, I will be bringing back the office hours. So I will be there at 5:45 before the Monday neighborhood meeting. I believe legislator, I'm going to help me. Legislator Leone is going to be joining me. So we'll both be there. I will post this to let you know. This is basically for some people, if you don't want to come to a neighborhood meeting, but you have issues, I'm there. And you can always feel free to call me, look me up, or you know, whatever you need, and I'll take care of your needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman at Large and Minority Leader Mark Williamson, you have the floor.
I have nothing. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman at Large, Samantha Plaza-Montesta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to first thank Senator Griffo. He came to City Hall last week and had a roundtable discussion with several council members, and I thought it was very informative. So I want to thank him for coming to the council meeting. I sent out a letter today to the city requesting that we do receive the allocations of ARPA funding. I think it's extremely important to see where we're at with spending, what has been allocated, what's left over.
moving forward before we look at our budget. So I hope that that request gets fulfilled, because like I said, I think it's a vital part to looking over the budget and seeing where we are financially. I do agree with Local 32 President Thomas Carcone. I think it's a shame the way that the fire department has been treated by this administration, from the way that the firehouses look, to not settling contracts, to a number of issues. And I thought it was extremely frustrating during that public safety meeting when the Corporation Council did come and try and speak to the council on behalf of union contracts, when they knew that somebody from the union would not be here to represent them. So I thought that that was another low blow shot to the fire department. With that said, I want to thank Council President Galimi for your memo in regards to the budget presentation. I could tell right off the bat, there's definitely some issues that I agree with you wholeheartedly with the budget, so I appreciate your no vote in regards to that, because I think knowing that the negotiations, even for the fire department, with those salary increases and healthcare and so on and so forth, that are not addressed in the budget is a serious concern. And I think that everybody should be concerned, not only for the fire department, but police department and the other unions that are involved in healthcare negotiations, because I think it's going to be detrimental if that doesn't get settled prior to that. That is it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman at Large and President Pro Tem, Frank DeBrango, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one quick reminder. I know there was the email sent out regarding our budget meetings every year. We try to get together with the department heads and discuss what their needs are, and hopefully guide them through the budget as well. So we are going to have meetings on Wednesday, March 1st at 5 p.m., Monday, March 6th, 5 p.m., Thursday, March 9th at 5 p.m. So I just want to make sure everybody's on board with these dates before we leave tonight. All the council members, I know you received an email, and we're probably going to have a special meeting after Thursday, March 9th, to make any amendments or anything that's needed prior to us calling for I know we're calling for a public hearing on the 15th, so we're going to have to make some adjustments if they're needed. So I just wanted to let everybody know before we leave tonight, make sure these dates are fine with everybody, so we could talk to the department heads and hopefully get this process going. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And when the council comes to an agreement when we may want to have that special meeting, in both the case prior to make the amendments and also after the 15th, when it's expected we may deal with the budget, I usually schedule a provisional meeting after the 15th, so that in case something goes awry, we still have a day to get together and pass it. But also the amendment meeting, please coordinate with me and I'll send that out. Thank you. I don't have anything this evening, so we're going to move on. We've got a pretty thick packet this evening. Proposed resolution number 1. Let's see here.
Motion to move, Mr. President.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Miola, a second from Friend. Resolution approving the granting of a permanent easement to Niagara Mohawk and Verizon. And for anyone listening, legally in our documents, it is still Niagara Mohawk. It is not National Grid, which is why it's listed as such. Be it resolved, whereas such easement is authorized subject to the approval of the Common Council, Utica, it is now therefore be it resolved that the mayor is authorized to execute the appropriate grant of easement and other documents necessary to effectuate this resolution. Your votes. Easement's attached.
You want to vote no? Oh. Just tell me you want to vote
Did you
yes.
try to switch it?
Just tell me you want it yes.
Just vote verbally if it's wrong.
That was already on when I.
Yeah, clear the board.
I mean-
Redo the
All right,
All right,
good.
clear the board. If that ever happens, just request to clear the board and we revote.
You wanted to talk, that's why.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
9 E's adopted.
thank you. Proposed ordinance 2 is sponsored by Councilmember DeBrango. Is there a second?
Motion to commit, Mr. President.
Okay, there's a motion to commit from Councilman Miola. That's an ordinance amending section 214-337 of the Utica City Code of Ordinances. Is there a second to commit? DeBrango? Any opposed to committing this? It's been committed. Ordinance 3, also sponsored by Councilmember DeBrango.
Motion to commit, Mr. President.
Second from DeBrango. Any opposed? It's in committee. Proposed resolution number 4 is a Commissioner of Deeds. Be it resolved that the Common Council does hereby approve the following person eligible for appointment to Commissioner of Deeds in and for the City of Utica, New York, within the term ending December 31st, 2024. Jeffrey E. Daniels. We have a second, or who's the motion on that?
I got it.
Okay. Beatrice and Miola. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Okay, for the purpose of this, are we going to read this into the record that the
You have to.
public, well, actually, you know what? I'd
we have
like
to
to
do the-
call that we make a motion to move ordinance 6 first.
Motion to commit ordinance 6, the annual estimate, Mr. President.
We have a second from Friend. Any opposed to placing the annual estimate for 2023, 2024? That's the ordinance adopting it in committee of the whole. It's in committee. Proposed ordinance 5 is calling for a public hearing on the annual estimate of 2023, 2024.
For the date of March 15th, Mr. President.
March 15th. I'll summarize. Be it ordained that on Wednesday, March 15th, Common Council will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. in the Common Council chambers for such persons that wish to be heard in reference to the annual estimate of the City of Utica for 2023, 2024 fiscal year, etc. Further ordained that the city clerk is hereby directed to cause notice of such hearing to be published in the official newspaper 3 times prior to said meeting of the Common Council. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you. The next piece is sponsored by Councilmember Aiello. Is there a second? Okay, that is resolution number 7, calling for a public hearing on the sale of 500-504 Columbia Street. This will be held March 1st, 2023 at 7 p.m. This is between Mohawk Valley Health Systems and the URA. Your votes in the public hearing. Mueller was the second. He's got his hand up. Thank you.
9 yeas adopted.
Okay, proposed ordinance number 8 is the sale of 500-504 Columbia Street.
Make a motion to commit, please, Mr. President.
Second from Miola. Any opposed? It's in committee. Proposed resolution number 9 is sponsored by Councilmember Burmaster. Is there a second? Second from Miola. That's calling for a public hearing on the sale of 318.46-1-28.1 and 1226 Capitol Avenue and 1231 Gray Avenue. It's for a sum of $100 to Human Technologies Property Corporation from the URA. That will be held on March 1st, 7 p.m. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Proposed ordinance 10 is the paired sale of that same property.
I'd like to make a motion to commit, please, Mr. President.
Second from Miola. Any opposed? It's in committee. Proposed resolution number 11 is a Commissioner of Deeds. It's the appointment to Commissioner of Deeds in and for the City of Utica, term ending December 31st, 2024. That is for Anthony G. Myers. Second from, who was the first? Sorry, we have Burmaster, Miola. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Someone like to move resolution 12? Commissioner Deeds, Tim Julian. That's all right. Williamson, Burmaster, Tim Julian. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
These have all been read in the pre-meeting conference, so I'll be summarizing. Resolution number 13, Commissioner of Deeds for Jack V. Lametico. Williamson, Beatrice, your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Proposed resolution number 14, Commissioner of Deeds for Michael V. Brigano. Beatrice, Williamson, your votes.
I'm down.
All right.
Guys are fighting for this one, huh?
Your votes. Yes.
They're fighting for these. Look at that.
Your votes. Votes, please.
Your votes.
Nine E's adopted.
Okay. Resolution 15, Commissioner Deeds for Alfred J. Galimi. Viola. And
Hey,
we're
this
going with
daddy.
DeBrango. Your votes.
Bob. Nine E's adopted.
Proposed resolution 16, Commissioner Deeds for Elaine Galimi. Williamson, Testa. Your votes.
She was a tweet and he was out. That was good.
I like
Oops,
it.
sorry.
I like it.
Coming up.
Nine E's adopted.
Proposed resolution number 17, Commissioner Deeds for Michael P. Galimi.
They're fighting over your
Viola.
family, Michael.
Beatrice is the second. Your votes. Clear it. Vote again. Councilperson Friend? There we go.
Nine E's adopted.
All right. Resolution 18, Commissioner Deeds for Amanda M. Daniels.
Absolutely.
Viola? Beatrice? Your votes.
Nine E's adopted.
Proposed resolution 19, Commissioner Deeds for Regina A.
Venatozzi.
Venatozzi.
Yes.
Viola, Aiello. Your votes.
Nine E's adopted.
Proposed resolution 20, Commissioner Deeds for Michael C. Gentile.
Mr. Gentile.
Aiello moved that one, and Viola is the second.
Mr. Gentile.
Nine E's adopted.
Okay. Proposed ordinance 21 is an ordinance amending section 2297C of the zoning code entitled Definitions, Neighborhood Retail.
Could I make a motion to commit, please, Mr. President?
Second from Viola. Any opposed? It's in committee. I just want to make a note that certain pieces need to go to the planning board, whichever those pieces are. If the council wants to make a motion to refer those on the floor, once we pass all these, please do. Okay?
Stephanie?
We also got a call for a public hearing as well.
Yes. Whatever piece of legislation needs to be referred to the planning board, can you take a copy of it and get it to them as soon as possible?
Well, we have to figure out which ones those are.
The one that changes the industrial one, that's the one that has to go.
And I don't believe you have that yet.
No.
Okay. I'm just bringing it up now, so when we get there,
Okay.
we can do that.
We'll do it March 1st meeting.
Your votes on 21.
In committee, Mr. President.
It's in committee.
You want us to vote on, put in committee?
Oh,
Okay.
that's what I meant. Any opposed? Yeah. All right.
Okay.
We're good. An ordinance amending section 2297C definitions of the zoning code. This is ordinance 22.
I would also like to make a motion to refer to committee, please.
Second, from Miola. Any opposed? It's in committee. Proposed ordinance 23 is an ordinance amending section 2297C definitions of the zoning code.
I'd like to make a motion to refer to committee, please, Mr. President.
Miola's the second. Any opposed? Okay.
Getting used to
Next
that, right?
piece is a resolution for Commissioner Deeds for Stephen A. Rafaro.
Mr.
Motion
Rafaro.
from DeBrango, second from Miola.
Mr.
Your votes.
Rafaro. Mr. Rafaro. Mr. Rafaro.
Yes. Would you like the floor?
No.
After we vote on it?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Councilperson Ayala? There we go.
Nine E's adopted.
Next piece is a resolution, Commissioner Deeds for Richard A. Tamano Jr.
Got it?
All right, Beatrice, Plasma Testa, your votes.
We're waiting for that one.
Come on.
Nine E's adopted.
Start throwing stuff behind me like David Letterman. We're gonna have that glass crashing sound, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep, that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
No, we
All
got
right.
two of those transfers.
26. Around 26, the moratorium.
Are we going to do that now?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll do that before the pieces for me and A. Let me pull it out.
Gotta waive that Thursday rule.
All right, so we have a motion to waive the Thursday rule, a second from Colosimo Testa. Any opposed to waiving the Thursday rule for the ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium on convenience stations, neighborhood retail stores, and/or smoke shops in the city of Utica for 45 days?
We're good.
Okay, it's been waived. Can someone move the piece? Or second the piece? It's sponsored by Colosimo Testa, second from Williamson. Be it ordained, the Commissioner of Urban and Economic Development, the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Department of Codes, and any other appropriate city agency shall not issue any permission or permit for the development and/or establishment of any new convenience stores, neighborhood retail stores, and/or smoke shops, regardless of the current zoning classification, for a period of 45 days, commencing today, February 15th, 2023. No, just like that. Okay.
9 E's adopted.
April Fool's. It's when it expires.
For real?
For real. It's a big joke.
Budget day, huh? All righty.
Oh, boy.
Let's get it done.
All right.
We gotta get it done. Get it done.
It is funny that that's when our budget always takes effect, isn't it?
April Fool's Day, yeah.
Okay.
Number 27.
No, hang on. I got two things here. We dealt with that. We dealt with that. All right, we got a stack up here. I'm just making sure we hit everything, right?
Yep.
Ordinance 27 is an ENA transfer from DPW Garage Electric to DPW Central Garage for a sum of $14,000.
Motion to move, Mr. President.
We have a second from Councilperson Friend. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Second piece, or second ENA transfer, ordinance 28, moved by
Samantha,
Councilperson
you gotta do
Colosimo
it.
Testa. All right, second by DeBrango. This is
That was
a
good.
transfer from fire mechanic repairs to auto materials, sum of $20,000. Your votes.
You had to do that.
9 E's adopted.
Proposed ordinance 29, ENA transfer. Viola, Friend. This is fire line physician's fees, fire administration contraction, sum of $30,000. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Proposed ordinance number 30, moved by Viola, second by Friend. This is a multi-account transfer for a sum of $18,000 to adjust for unexpected repairs at the Liberty Bell Park account. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 31, another ENA transfer. Viola, Friend. This is a total of $41,000 to adjust for unexpected front door upgrades, pest control, light tower rental, and heating upgrades. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Before we adjourn, I do need someone to actually make a motion on the floor to refer those ordinances to the planning board.
I'd like to make a motion to refer those ordinances to the planning board.
The ordinances that were placed in committee.
Any required motions?
I'd like to make a motion to refer to the
Go
planning
ahead.
board any ordinances that the planning board is required by the city to.
Based on the ordinances that were placed in
Yeah.
committee, is there a second?
What'd you
Okay.
need? Go ahead,
I guess
Steph.
I misinterpreted. I thought you were leaving them so that Judge and I could finalize them and then
Oh.
send to planning board. I mean, otherwise I'm
Corporation
gonna
Council has a
be sending
point.
a lot of
It
stuff.
also said on the legislation that it was referred to us by our corporation council.
All right, regardless, they were for your consideration.
We just like to move it as soon as possible. If there's any intent that they feel, we're just gonna critique it. So if there's any intent that's outside the parameters of the legislation, then we can go from there.
Before we amend it.
All right?
Yeah,
Do you
I
have
think
to have it in
they
final
need to be
form?
in their final form.
You want it in final form? Is that what you
All right,
want?
so you want to rescind the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second, Mr. President.
Okay. There was one other thing I feel like we had to tend to.
Can I motion to close then?
I did.
Did the
I made
budget.
a motion.
Second to adjourn.
Okay. All right. There's something else to, yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.